everybody. Sorry, we're a few minutes late. We're having, as you can see, a little internet. We're not on yet. It's preparing.
Oh, there we go.
Are you on?
I see you.
Okay. All right. I think we're on. Yep, we are on. Oh, right on. Okay, mine says we're preparing, so I hope it's working for everybody. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in with us today on Business Our Way. We have one I think a lot of you know, Adelia Carrillo. Her roots are in corporate and consumer electronics industry. Her passion for technology and business and marketing has been a key strength in her transition to the cannabis space. Adelia is now the CMO of Eventhi, and Eventhi is an online ticketing platform for cannabis-related events. And her first position in the cannabis industry was CEO of Direct Cannabis Network. Hi, Adelia. Thank you for taking time out in the middle of your day to come and be with us.
Of course. Hi, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. I'm so honored to be able to chat with you and chat with all you all, everyone tuning in.
Well, you look joyful and amazing as always. I always like to start and kind of ask, how did you come to the plant? Tell us, how she brought you here.
Well, definitely the plant found me. Growing up, obviously I did dabble in cannabis when I was younger in my high school and college years, but I didn't have the knowledge or understanding of the medicinal benefits back then. As I grew up and found myself in corporate America, I worked for a really great company, but it was definitely a high stressful job. And during that transition, I thought my life was set. I had this amazing career. I was moving up within the company, and I just thought nothing could go wrong. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm going to do. Life didn't have that plan for me. After about 5 years of working in the consumer electronic industry, my fiance and I actually found out that I was pregnant, which wasn't a bad thing. We were very excited when we found that out. However, quickly after, some things transformed. I was put onto bed rest, and then things went a little bit more south, and I had to go to the emergency room, and unfortunately I had to have an emergency surgery. The pregnancy was affecting my life, and unfortunately I had to go that route. After the surgery, emotionally and physically, I went through so much. I was a completely different person. I don't know, it was all a phase or a haze kind of going through that experience, but the doctors give you the prescriptions that they give you, and they want you to start walking and getting better again. And the medication has always made me really, really sick, and I've never been able to really kind of be coherent on it in general. So I would just lay in bed because I was always dizzy or nauseous. So my fiance, actually, he's the one that suggested cannabis. And, I laugh because back then, when he told me that, I remember the look on my face. I remember laughing, and I was like, because to me back then, cannabis meant munchies. I would always get the munchies. I still sometimes do, but so I'm like, why? What do you mean I'm going to smoke? It's just going to have me eat all the time. Obviously that was a naive moment of mine. I didn't understand this plant then, but I said, why not? Anything's better than feeling like this. And the plant surprised me. She made me into a better human. I'm 180, physically, emotionally, mentally, everything about that once I began that journey. And so, yeah, she found me in a very, I would say, traumatic point of time, but she healed me and actually healed me through everything else that I went through in my life too, because of that.
She is a beautiful thing, this plant, I believe. That's beautiful. How long ago was that you had to go through all that?
Now we're reaching about 4.5, almost 5 years. Yeah, almost
Wow.
5 years. And unfortunately, I still have some physical pain issues, and the doctors said I'm healthy, but we are starting to plan for hopefully having a family soon. But I have to do a lot more, like doctor appointments, and kind of see what route I have to take, because I'm healthy, but we just don't know what's going to happen. So.
Well, off of the Zoom recording, I don't know if we got knocked out of Facebook or not, but I'll get us back on if we did, and it's recording. But off of this conversation, I'd like to talk to you about the different energy aspects of that stuff, because that's where a lot of my trauma is. And I would really like to share with you some of the things that I can help you just spiritually and energetically work on that as you do medically, diet-wise, all those other things to support that mission, which is a mission.
I love that. Yeah.
I was told I would never have a child when my back went out. Is it working? Adelia, did it go out? Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, I can hear you.
I was told that I would never have a child when my back went out, and I have had a few of my own experiences, miscarriages. But when I started doing a lot of my healing work, my son is actually considered a medical miracle because of how fried my hormones were from all the pain. Wow. So I think there's a lot of spirit that you can put into that too, to help make that happen.
Yeah. That's good to hear.
Yeah. So that shows a lot of your strength. We were talking about earlier before we got on the camera how women in cannabis can persevere. And I think you've been through. So you went through this experience, a very personal experience, but at the same time, you've been building business. Because look where you are now. So let's talk about that. I mean, that you really got back up again.
Yeah, I dove into it. As I started healing from the plant, I started researching and looking for really things that I liked, which was startups, entrepreneurship, tech, innovation, and then it was kind of lacking. I didn't really see a community that was available or that could give a voice. And, it was a variety of things. As I started to connect with a lot of these, the growers and just the community aspect, I'm like, things are going to change. If there's a way that we could create a community to connect these people together, to give them a voice, even as this becomes an industry, maybe that's how we could do good. We could help, in our own way. So that's kind of really where the journey of DCN evolved, and it grew. It was exciting, and we were able to give a lot of voices and exposure to a lot of startups and brands, and just a variety of different companies. So it was a lot of work too, which many things are, but that was kind of the beginning of the building.
What made you to decide to go into media?
Again, it was just that's where I felt I could excel. I didn't go to school for media. I always did want to become a reporter when I was younger. So it was kind of a funny thing how it just connected. But I didn't have a journalism degree or anything. And I just studied and really figured out, like, we kind of learned as we went. We really built it. I remember the first time, we got our team together and we went to this event. It was more like a sesh. It was, I think, 7:10 something. And we had our camera walking around, with our microphone. And it's hilarious now because everybody was like, who are these people? Like, no, half of them didn't want to be on camera. And I'm just like, why? What's wrong? Because again, I still didn't fully you know, I had some moments where there's still a lot of things I had to learn. But there's a lot of people who gave us a chance. So once they were like, okay, they're actually cool. They're not, you know, they're not narcs or they're not like anything like that. But it was a lot of learning experience. And I just wanted to be able to, you know, give a voice in a way that I think that we could provide, just provide and I don't know, just provide a community.
Well, you've already mentioned one of the hurdles, which was dealing with a bunch of people in the cannabis industry who didn't want to be on camera. I'm sure that was difficult dealing with those folks that don't want to be on camera. What are some of the other hurdles that you've come across as a woman trying to navigate that with media?
Sorry, it kind of cut out. What are the hurdles?
Yes. What are some of the hurdles that you've had to navigate as a woman? You mentioned one, which was dealing with a cannabis community that doesn't want to be, that's afraid, and, you know, especially 5 years ago, to be on film. But what are some of the others that you've come across?
Yeah. I think in the beginning it was a little bit, it was understanding how this industry was built and, you know, what people went through and everything. Like that was the biggest thing, the biggest learning curve that which I think everybody needs to, especially as they're coming into this industry, is understand. We all need to look at the history of this plant, no matter what you're doing in this industry. It doesn't matter if you're ancillary, if you're a service provider, every one of us should know what it was, the history behind this plant in general. But that was one of the, you know, initial hurdles. As the company grew, next was more on the business side of things. You know, funding was and is a hard one. The other one, though, that surprised me was intimidation. There was a lot of, you know, people tried to intimidate me a lot. Unfortunately, they were all older men. And, you know, to me, it was more that they were, now I look back and I was like, obviously we were making enough waves to make them feel intimidated. But that didn't give them a right to how they put me into certain situations, you know, now that I look back at it. But yeah, there was definitely just the intimidation and funding became the harder ones.
And how did you, I mean, you've been DCN, I mean, you've been doing that for quite a few years. How have you funded that? I'm back. I think I'm back. Can you hear me, Adelia?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So let's talk about funding, because you have been active with DCN Media for quite a while, and that's quite a feat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with the funding with on DCN's journey, you know, the first year and a half we bootstrapped it. I used my savings and our like 401k and whatnot. I really wanted to invest in the company. And then as I started to realize if we wanted to become an actual real media company, that wanted to scale and become this, you know, global community, we were going to need to raise capital. So we actually I applied for an accelerator program called Canopy San Diego. And we went through that process. What was good was I got my first kind of negotiating practice with them, because there are a certain amount of a percentage of equity that they do get for a certain amount of money. And so that was something that I wanted to make sure that I negotiated them with, because I realized the benefit that we were providing them, but also what we needed in return. We needed the knowledge of speaking investor. You know, I learned a lot of my like business knowledge, you could say, from the internet. Like I learned my business plan, my investor deck, like all those things you can learn online, but I knew I needed to learn from experts, even in person, you know? So my team and I got accepted and went through the program, and And that helped because that gave us some initial funding. And then when we, I guess you could call it, graduated from the program, we got more funding from them. But then after that, it was really hard. It was, being a media company, you have to have the eyeballs, you have to have the reach before you can start charging, before you can start making revenue. And going to investors without, kind of just showing them, our growth was great, what we're doing is great, the content, our shows, all this, but no revenue, was very tough. There's not that many media investors in general. There's not a lot of cannabis investors. Now there are, but back then there were not. So being in a niche with media and already having little investors and cannabis, it was a lot harder. So.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't understand that about media. I always thought lots of people would want to invest in media because it was a safe way to engage in the industry. But I come from the high risk end, so.
That's what I thought too. I'm like, we're not plant touchy. We get to do all these things, but it does go back to the revenue. And, this day and age, they're realizing that, especially for online media companies, the old revenue stream that they all built, it wasn't really working. It wasn't viable. So for us, realizing that, we had to try to figure out, what are we going to do different, and yeah, so it became really challenging trying to raise money, and I kept going back and forth with, why am I going to waste time trying to focus on fundraising if it's, maybe I should just focus on having us build the company, make the revenue, and then once we start having revenue, go back and fundraise. But you go back and forth because, well, if you just focus and close the round, that could scale you a lot quicker than slowly moving at it, So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now let's talk about intimidation. Intimidation, I don't think you're the only one that has had to overcome or deal with that hurdle. I mean, I can be accused of being intimidating at times, but I know there's a lot of intimidate. It's really a survival tactic from the old industry coming through. It's how we protected ourselves. It's how we protected our communities. It is to make sure that people, understood that they were on a new turf, so to speak. So how have you gotten through that? And do you feel like there's been a transition? Or do you feel like it's getting tougher? Or how have you gotten around those? Let's start there. How have you gotten around some intimidation and gotten through that strong? Because you sure don't look like you could be intimidated. You look very strong and righteous.
That's good. That's good. So there were, I could count it on, about 4 times where this has happened. And a lot of it was so silly to me. Like one example was we had a really well-known event called the Seed Series. We were bringing it up north, and we were doing an event one of the evenings of a conference. Another organization was doing another event the following day. And I don't know if it was because we were getting more exposure or more people were talking about our event, but that individual started threatening the people that were going to be pitching at their event from pitching that they couldn't come, they couldn't even come to my event. They couldn't go to any other event that if they were participating in that one. So that was just one example, very minimal. There was quite a few others, but that was the one that was the easiest to talk about. And, it baffled me because these are startups. We should be helping them get as much exposure as they want. We shouldn't be telling them you can't go here, you can't do this for their business, So that was the first thing. It made me so mad. But then of course, it sounds so silly saying it, but it hurt my feelings, it did. It hurt my feelings. I was like, what the heck? So I had a moment where I did freak out. I called a couple of my girlfriends that are mentors as well. And I was just like, look, what do I do? do I stand strong? Do I say anything? Like, how do I handle this? Like, and they all, they let me vent. They all gave me like their feedback, and I just took the higher ground. We had a couple of the companies unfortunately had to back out, and I just said, I apologize. You're even in the situation that you have to pick. At the end of the day, do what you have to do. I'm like, but again, like I just felt like I felt bad for them. Like it wasn't right. And so then I had to have a conversation with that individual, and I kind of explained myself and explained the thinking. I don't know if they learned from it or what, but usually each of those times, I do kind of take it in. I have a moment of freaking out and getting mad or sad. And the best way you can overcome his intimidation is feel that. You have every right to. Cry it out if you have to, and then go to whoever you go to that is a mentor or somebody that, can kind of give you a level head, just kind of let you talk it out. Because there's a reaction, but there's also a way you can move forward without maybe reacting in a certain way. And I know at times it may be easier just to react and not think about it, but especially when it comes to business, I've learned you do want to think things through. Everything could have a repercussion, even if you're not on the wrong side of the table. So how you handle things does reflect a lot in a leader, in anything in life, really. So yeah.
Yeah, it can take you really quickly from being on one side to the other side of the table, depending on how you react.
Yeah.
Living in a small community up here, we have a lot of conflicts, and that we have to figure out which way to go and how to work together. And I have to say, I am really proud of my community. We just had a little conflict, and it was great. The other event organizer and I communicated, and really they're different events, and they're really supportive to our community, and both important. And so we've figured out a way for, the clients that would like to be at our event, we're going to help them with their tables. So if they would like to go to the dinner, they can attend. We're such a small community globally as a cannabis community that I think it's a really big opportunity for us to build that way, collaboratively, like that.
Exactly. There's so much room and opportunity for everyone. I think, I just don't understand. I mean, it is in any aspect of building an industry, competition does come, but we can go further in the bigger picture if everybody remembers the importance, of why we're all even here. This plant is what brought us here. And so, I think these kind of conversations and organizations that are bringing awareness to just in general, the history and the stories and these everything, and it'll help. I truly believe it'll help.
Yes, I think what I see happening with female leadership throughout the industry, I see all of us really coming together and supporting each other. I think we have a lot of strength in working together that way as women, and I think it might be how we push past that needle point and show our value really through working together and being really strong, so you can't say no to us.
Exactly. That's so true.
I think that's a woman's greatest tool, actually, in business and in politics, is that we're able to see these big pictures, and so we can build stories. So it's really hard to say no or say that's a bad thing, whether you're in media, politics, designing business. We can build to what is needed, not necessarily to just what we think, but to what we need, by bringing in all that information and sharing. And it's very potluck-like is how I was raised, around sharing ideas. And what we do as women in this industry is very much that same thing. I love it. Yeah. So what are some of the tools that you use on a regular basis to deal with things like intimidation, to deal with things like funding. You know, we'll get into Eventhi in a minute, but you're still, I'm sure, I mean, every cannabis business on the planet needs to fund right now. I know very few that don't, not that I know them all, but the market. So I'm sure you're still in that conversation. How now from 5 years ago are you dealing with funding differently?
You know, the biggest thing that I've learned along the way is, like, once you start to understand how fundraising works, investing, how they think, you know, their language, you have to kind of keep studying it and staying up to date with what's going on in general. Because, you know, once you stop looking at that, you can forget in a sense, the language that they do speak. But, you know, now that I've kind of went through my moments of trying to fundraise for DCN and the hurdles, and I've been able to really utilize a lot of the questions that they asked me, a lot of the things that made them not want to invest in DCN at that time, and have a better understanding of what investors are looking for. You know, now almost every single day I have my Google alerts, and I'm trying to read on, you know, investment in general, even companies that are getting funded, that are getting acquired, not just in cannabis, but in a variety of different industries. Because the more you can learn of how other businesses are doing things, not even in cannabis, you might be able to tweak your own business and you know, make it a stronger foundation. The other thing that I've learned is relationship building is huge. Especially when you're trying to fundraise again with investors, you know, because even if that investor may not be a good fit for you, they know a lot more investors that they might be able to connect you. You know, the best thing with getting connecting with another investor or a VC is through a referral or through an email introduction. That is how a lot of them want to meet you. It's not just the cold emails anymore. They still do it, but, you know, a lot of them I'm seeing now want like an actual warm introduction to get to connect with you. So a lot of it's just self-learning. You know, I think that's the one thing. Going back to the internet, you can learn anything. And that is one thing I've wanted to strive. You know, I didn't finish college, and I'm not going to let that hold me back in any way. You know, I can learn all of this, and at least at the end of the day, I've been able to experience a lot more as well by getting my hands dirty, by going through the nitty-gritty of having to learn a lot of this stuff. But yeah, so that would be, you know, just continuously educating and learning and teaching myself new things. We are also fundraising for Eventhi, so I've been able to kind of utilize a lot of those skills and bring it and help the team, along with my network as well of investors that we've been able to connect with. You know, one of the things that I did when I first started fundraising was made a huge Excel sheet of just all different types of investors, whether they've invested in early stage, whether they invested in media, cannabis in general. And I've just held on to that and kind of kept updating it as we go, because you just never know when you're going to need it. So finding ways to just get things, you know, organize things and keep them on your list is good to go. What else? With the fundraising, that's that. With the intimidation, it's just learning business better and learning how to be more strategic. I never, you know, nowadays I see myself thinking 5 times ahead and preparing for a hiccup or a hurdle so that I know how I'm going to prepare for that next step. So it's always just, it may be overthinking, but you do want to prepare as much as you can. As we all know, this industry is changing every day, every minute. And you may think one thing is going this way. A perfect example this year was the packaging. That was like a huge issue the beginning of this year. I think it was this year, maybe it was the end of last year. But you know, they had these regulations set, and then within a couple of months they rechanged it all again. That's proof of what everybody's going through every single day. So always be on your toes, always prepare, always think 2 steps ahead, 3 steps ahead if you can.
I really like the advice on self-learning. I think that's Another way that our industry is going to revolutionize things is through education, because so many of us are self-taught. It was the only way to break into the industry, really. And I think it's a huge value. Like, we're the new trade, you know, but we can do anything. We can be CEOs. We can do anything in this new trade.
Exactly.
So
I think one good thing with that, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one other thing that with that comment that you just said, you know, with this self-taught thing, also protect yourself. You know, get contracts in place, do due diligence on people. A lot of people want to partner, and partnering, you may want to ask yourself, why do they want to partner with you? And make sure that they're providing just as much value as well. So yeah, just one final thought on that.
Well, that is a really good final thought, because I think for myself personally, that was my biggest weakness, was I didn't understand my own value. And then once I understood it, and still to this day, I'm in the middle right now of trying to put, because I just got my permits passed and all this stuff going on, to put an executive summary together. And you know, I've been working on this for 5 years, so I have all these pieces that need to come together. And I told one of my partners on it recently, I said, I just don't know how to put all my value together. And as women, that's a hard thing to understand, how to sit down at a boardroom table and say, this is why you need me. You know, this is why you should invest in me. We're definitely getting better at it, but I can get better. I need to get better at that.
I do too. I do too. I think the hardest thing is showing how we are valuable, even though we are. We need to recognize it.
Right. So you just recently made a really big decision, which I admire incredibly. You know, I think my internet, there we go. You just made a really big decision that I really admire. I see a lot of men and women struggling in this industry because they believe they have to go a certain way. You know, and my philosophy around this plant is that really what she does is empower us to do what is best and ignites us the most. And that isn't always farming. That isn't always making a product in cannabis. That isn't always, you know, being a part of a company you built, the rest of your life. And you just made a major transition from DCN Media into Event High. That must be a bit like sending your child off to college.
Kind of. Yeah. It was the hardest thing to kind of go into and to decide and to even realize. I spent about almost 5.5 years building, which I know compared to a lot of the OGs, that's nothing. But for like my first, company and with DCN, that was a lot of work and a lot of time for me. And it was my baby. But at the end of it, it was tough. At the very end, last year, trying to find a stable revenue model for DCN was really hard. We had many hurdles that we hit as a company. I made some wrong decisions when it came to revenue, into letting certain products go that shouldn't have. And I learned a lot. But when I started 2019, I was like, this is the year, my heart was still in DCN. And I'm like, this is the year I'm going to save DCN. And I had this whole plan out for us to do these certain things, which I believe by the end of this year was going to bring enough revenue. As things started moving forward, the pieces did start coming together, but within a few months, my anxiety was increasing. I was always exhausted. I felt like I was depressed all the time, and I just couldn't figure out why. I was just like, maybe I'm just tired. I'm working so hard. I'm just trying. But, it finally came to head when I just kind of had a wake up call, and I was like, no, it was really this. I asked, I'm like, okay, we're going to do this big event at the end of the year. That's the ending component of 2019. That is going to save DCN. And then what? And once I lost the and then what, I realized I'm not thinking ahead anymore. It's not there anymore. It's not, my heart is not able to move forward with this anymore. Even though I love DCN, I loved everything about it. It was just, I wasn't giving it 110%. And I realized that's, as a leader, I can't continue moving forward if I'm not giving 110%. It's not right for me. It's not right for the team, and it's not right for the business. So yeah. So that came to head.
That decision, I think, shows how strong your leadership is.
Thank you. It was hard. Yeah, you know, because you start to think that you failed. You start to think, what are people going to think of you? You know, I didn't have a lot of investors, but we had investors, and I'm like, you know, I felt like they were going to be disappointed. And yeah, so, you know, it was interesting. I officially decided. And once I said it out loud, honestly, like it felt just like everything just came off my shoulders, and I could literally breathe again, I was like, as soon as I'm like, I can breathe again, I'm like, this was the right decision. I know it hurts. I know I'm sad. I know all these things, but like, I feel better, and I have to focus on me for a minute, you know? So we made the announcement. We are still trying to figure out what's going to happen with DCN. We have some people interested in buying it, but that's also tough because I want to focus ahead. I want to focus on my new position. I want to move forward. But I feel like I can't necessarily until I either close DCN officially or until it gets sold. And two, I mentioned it before the call, you know, I had an identity crisis. For 5.5 years of being Adelia of DCN, it's weird saying it, but like I felt like that became that role, you know, like that's what I was living, breathing, eating for the past 5.5 years. And again, I felt like I lost myself again in a weird way. So there was a lot to deal with, and still, I think, a lot that I'm still kind of moving through, you know, and trying to find, you know, trying to realize that DCN wasn't a failure. We impacted a lot. We did a lot. We did create a huge community and hopefully made a difference. And now I can utilize everything I learned with DCN and take it on with my new position with Eventhi.
Well, I think you did accomplish a lot with DCN. I mean, you reached a lot of people, and your purpose has always been authentic and full of compassion. So I don't think you could ever call it a loss by any means, no matter what ended up happening. And, you know, probably you've managed to come over one of the biggest hurdles that I think a lot of people in our industry are going to have to face at some point, myself included. I have multiple projects, and I've had to let go of a dispensary that really broke my heart. It really broke my heart. So I do, and a political organization. But also it makes you, your team can trust you because you're going to make those hard decisions, you know, and you're an example for so many of us that have to make these hard decisions in our life. So thank you for expressing it and being willing to talk about it and sharing it with everybody, because we don't always share those things. That is a vulnerable place to be, and I have a lot of admiration for you around it. So you go, girl. So let's talk about some things like what do you see coming up in the next year for this industry?
For this industry, wow, it's, you know, I think it's still going to be quite crazy as it is right now. I think there's going to be a lot more hurdles and challenges before it gets any easier. But I think what we are going to start to see overall with this industry is more innovation, with consumer electronic products, like ag tech. I think too, even, all these, with the most recent headlines with the vaping, we're going to probably start to see some new companies come in and really try to recover or not recover, but transform that sector of the industry. Yeah, I mean, I think it's still going to be a long road ahead, but it's all worth it, I think, at the end of the day. I don't know. Whenever I try to think of the future, I'm just like, you never know, because what I thought was going to happen, by this summer didn't happen yet, or, certain things happen sooner for this industry and a lot of companies. So yeah, we'll see where that goes.
It is hard, until policy really settles and we start having normal business throughout the supply chain, it is going to be difficult. But, it's also interesting because it's teaching a very large amount of people the natural laws of nature and how to live by those cycles and let go, yet give it your all. So those of us that make it through, I think we're going to have a lot to share. So what are you up to in the next year? What are some of your goals?
Some of my goals. Well, as you mentioned, I've taken on this new role, the CMO position for Eventhi, which I'm really excited about, just because in the sense, their mission, their values, and why they believe the value of events, of bringing people together. It has a not weird, it aligns with DCN in a sense, and it aligned with a lot of my values and vision as well. So it was a great opportunity, and I'm excited to be a part of it. It's a true example. Their events are important for this industry because they help bring education, they help bring experiences, they help connect everybody. And you get to find your kind of tribe of people that like to do what you like to do as well. So with that, my goal, is to really help them scale as a company. They've been a small team, and we're still a small team, but we've actually expanded a little bit further, and we're starting to really scale, and they've accomplished a lot, in the past year and a half. And so we're really just trying to focus on scaling the company, closing our seed round, and just trying to make a difference within the cannabis community. Outside of my role with Eventhi, I mentioned it a little earlier. I want to start planning a family soon, and I think it's ready, and also have my wedding. Like my fiance and I, we put our wedding off because we both wanted to start businesses in this space, and we put it off for many years. So those are the main things. We want to kind of finally start living. We've lived startup life for quite a while now, and we believe all the hard work's going to start coming through, and we'll be able to start the next process of going through the steps of having a family and getting, hopefully getting pregnant. And the final thing is, I am starting to say it out loud because I want to manifest it. I'm going to become an angel investor. I'm going to do it. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to. So that's another, in the next 3 to 4 years is a goal. I want to start learning how to become an investor. I want to start saving so I can start investing, because I think we need more women to do it. We need to be that role model for others, and I want a seat at the table. I've seen some of these conversations happen, and I feel we bring a lot, and we see things differently as women, and even when it comes to value or revenue models or how things are spent in general. So those are the 3 things that I'm focused on.
Well, I got my goosebumps when you said the angel investor thing. That is a fantastic goal. Yeah, I think you've probably given a lot of us a new goal. You just gave me one.
Yeah. I think it's possible. It's not like we have to have millions and millions of dollars. There's ways we can invest in companies that, we know deserve it. There's so many companies out there that I see working their butts off, and if I could, I would invest in them. So,
yeah, I think the more of us as we succeed, that's a great way to help empower not just women, but the whole cannabis community.
Exactly.
So what are some, as we're rounding out on our time here, what are a couple pieces of, I mean, you've given us a lot of advice today, a lot of great tips, but specifically to women, what are a couple of key pointers that you could give to women that are actually coming into the industry right now, not used to this industry, but coming in?
I think a couple things would be, the first thing, which is something I mentioned earlier as well, but education. Educate yourself on this plant, educate yourself on the history of this plant, have some sort of connection with this plant, even if you don't or can't consume, just have an understanding and a connection of the healing benefits and what it has done for so many people. Also, it is a rough road. It is very challenging at times. It is very distracting at times. So make sure to stay focused on what you're trying to do and your mission. That's why companies need to have their mission and values, because when times are tough, that mission and those values are going to bring you back in check. When things are good, those mission and values are going to make you happy and align and remind you why you do what you do. And the time is now. I was so scared about announcing I was coming into going to start a business in the cannabis space. My parents both worked for the district attorney's office, and so that was a big no-no growing up. And my dad is a retired sheriff as on top of all that. So that was not a normal thing for me to come out and say it. But in the beginning, it was fine if people judging me, because I saw how cannabis changed my life. And, the biggest thing was I just wanted my parents to be okay with it. But going back to that, the time is now. Don't let people's judgments or anything hold you back on following your dreams or what you vision. And coming into the cannabis space, you do have opportunity. There is still opportunity. We still can make a difference in the amount of women that are in these executive roles, and bring your skills, whatever you're focused or whatever your skill sets are, bring them into the space and you'll find the right people. Just network as much as you can and just be out there and just see who you connect with.
And then what about, we have a lot of women, because this is in the supply chain group. So we have a lot of women in the supply chain group that have really been in this industry, like myself, for a very long time. What's some advice to those women that are coming out of the shadows and engaging in business?
I think first off, thank you all. You all have really been a part of the history of this plant. You guys have risked so much for this plant, and maybe, I don't know if you guys hear it enough, but you are appreciated to each and every one of us. And so the biggest piece of advice is don't give up. You may need to pivot. You may need to pass on the baton and teach somebody else how to maneuver and to also kind of try new things. You are going to have to start building as many of you are probably realizing, starting to build brands and starting to build, business plans or just different models, and all these different things may be overwhelming, but it is capable to learn. You can reach out to other people who are willing to help you. But again, as you all know, I'm sure, to do the due diligence behind these people. But, I know the times are changing. I know it can be intimidating, but at the end of the day, you guys have built the foundation. So just stay tough.
Well, thank you. I hope that a lot of my ladies in this community are listening to that, because they don't hear it enough. A lot of people don't think about the sacrifices that not just the women, but the men have made are huge. And legalization has been a very difficult road for most people that were in the medical market. So thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us. Where can everybody find you now if they want to reach out to you on their own?
So on Instagram, it's Miss Adelia. Same thing with Twitter, or you can find me, Adelia Carrillo, on Facebook, or check out Eventhi. It's www.eventhi, like hi.io. So, yeah.
Thank you. I love the name. When I first met Ollie and the name, I was like, this is going to be great. It really, it's really a good name. It's perfect. And what you guys are doing and the way you guys have created the platform and you manage the business is very much in tune with the values of the plant and where this community came from. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and thank you, Adelia, and we will see you this Sunday again on Business Our Way. Have a beautiful rest of your afternoon, ladies. Talk to you soon. Bye. Okay, we are off.
Cool. We did it.
You did, and thank you for getting vulnerable and kind of just talking about the not so comfortable parts. I think that's some of the biggest gifts we can give in our strength is show those parts of ourselves. So thank you.
I really believe. And too, it's like I realize it more and more because growing up, I held all this stuff in. And I don't want to be just blurt it all out, now, but I'm realizing that it does help. It does help heal. It does help us realize things about ourselves as we share what we go through with others. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it helps. I find by telling it, it also helps us process.
Exactly.
That's
so true.
Yeah. Well, darling, if I can do anything to help you, I'm going to reach out to you when I have my executive summary done.
Yes, because definitely.
Maybe you have some people in your pocket that would be interested in what I'm doing up here. I think it's going to be a good project. We'll see. But I'm excited about it. And the other thing I want to talk to you guys at some point. I don't understand why we don't use Eventhi along with Eventbrite for Scentsy. And if you guys can talk to me about that, then I can go and talk to the company about that and figure out how to get us integrated, because our event should be on your guys' thing. And I don't understand why we're not doing that.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it's a double, you get double the exposure too, on both platforms.
That's what I don't understand. So I'm gonna it might just be logistics and bandwidth, and then I can do it. I know I tried to do it on one of the events, and I'm just so bad at all this stuff. I think I messed it up, but yeah, I have to figure that out why that is, but it just doesn't make sense to me. All right, sweetheart. Well, if anything I can do, let me know. And thank you. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. And yeah, keep me posted about the executive summary. Any questions, I can help.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm working on it.
Bye.
Bye.